The music thumped through the polished wooden floors of the downtown dance studio, a rhythmic pulse echoing with the movements of young bodies chasing their dreams. Amid the fluid twirls and sharp footwork stood Liana, 22 years old. Quiet and focused, her every move a harmony of grace and discipline. But not everyone appreciated the artistry. From the moment she joined the class, the atmosphere shifted. The three self-proclaimed alphas of the studio, Brent, Tyler, and Mason, fixated on her. Not because of her skill, but because of her silence. Her fitted leotards and the curve of her back when she stretched at the bar. They whispered crude jokes during warm-ups, mimicked her movements with mockery, and stared too long, too openly. The others noticed, but said nothing. That afternoon, the class rehearsed a contemporary piece heavy with emotional release. As Liana spun into a sweeping leap, Brent deliberately blocked her landing. She stumbled, gasping, crashing to the floor. Laughter erupted from the trio as Tyler muttered, "Maybe she needs a little hands-on help." The studio fell silent. Liana, on the ground, looked up at them, not with fear, not with shame, but with eyes cold and unreadable. She said nothing. She stood, brushed off the dust, and returned to her mark. "What? No reaction?" Mason sneered. "You one of those silent freaks." He tugged at the strap of her sports top as he passed by, and Brent shoved a phone toward her face camera on. "Smile, sweetheart. Your fans are watching." No one intervened. Some looked away. A few smirked nervously. The instructor, absent today, had left the class under the supervision of the senior male dancers, those very bullies now tightening their grip on power. But Liana had been here before. Different place, same script. The mocking, the cornering, the expectation that someone like her slim, elegant quiet would fold under pressure. She didn't. What they didn't know, what no one here knew, was that after dance rehearsals, Liana trained in silence at a rundown gym on 6th and Row. Her coach didn't teach pirouettes. He taught survival. Her evenings weren't filled with TikToks or Netflix, but drills, strikes, and bone locks in Krav Maga, the combat technique designed to end threats fast and hard. And now her body remembered more than choreography. She met Brent's smug grin with a blank stare, letting the tension build, letting the others laugh louder, letting them think she was breakable. Because the next move would silence the entire room. The locker room always reeked of sweat and cheap cologne. That afternoon, it reeked of something worse, predatory confidence. Liana had waited until the others cleared out. She needed space to breathe. Her chest was tight, but not with fear, rather restraint. She knew what she was capable of. She just hadn't decided if they deserved it yet. But they didn't wait long. Tyler barged in first, phone in hand, already recording. "Look who's all alone," he crooned mockingly. "Perfect time for a private lesson, huh?" Mason followed, leaning on the doorframe with a wolfish smirk. Brent, always last but loudest, kicked the locker shut beside her, startling the echo across the tiled walls. "You don't talk much, ballerina," he taunted, stepping into her space. "But we can make you scream." Liana's back was to the mirror. She could see all three behind her reflected clearly. Brent moved closer, his fingers stretching toward the strap on her shoulder. That's when she spoke for the first time. "Touch me again. I dare you." The calmness of her voice made them freeze just for a beat. Then they laughed. "Oh, we've got a live one now." Mason chuckled, reaching for the hem of her top. In that moment, Liana's body moved with the same precision she used on stage, but the rhythm had changed. No longer a dance of expression. This was a choreography of destruction. She shifted sideways, grabbed Mason's wrist mid-reach, and twisted it sharply. A sickening pop cracked through the air as he screamed, his phone flying from his hand. Before the others could react, Liana swept low and pivoted her leg, slamming into Brent's shin. He buckled, and she rose with a knee straight to his stomach. He collapsed, gasping, face turning white. Tyler stood frozen. "What the hell are you?" he barked, eyes wide, backing into the wall. Liana didn't respond. She walked slowly toward him, each step deliberate, each breath controlled. He lunged. She ducked, caught his arm mid-swing, and turned with brutal speed, his elbow cracked against the edge of a bench. He howled, dropping his phone. She kicked it away. In under 30 seconds, the three boys who had strutted in with arrogance were now crumpled, groaning on the floor. Mason clutched his wrist, moaning curses. Brent curled around himself, one hand on his stomach, the other protectively over his groin. Tyler slid down the wall, holding his twisted arm, muttering in disbelief. Liana stood over them, her breathing steady. No rage, no screaming, just control. "You wanted to film something," she said coldly, picking up Mason's phone from the ground. She flipped it toward them, camera facing their writhing bodies. "Smile." She pressed record. The video rolled for only 12 seconds, just long enough to capture the aftermath. The groaning, the curled bodies, the sudden reversal of power. Liana held the phone steady, her gaze impassive. "No edits," she said, tossing the phone onto Mason's chest with a thud. "Make sure everyone sees what real humiliation looks like." Mason whimpered, fingers trembling as he fumbled to stop the recording. Tyler cursed under his breath, still curled against the lockers, too dazed to fully process what had just happened. Brent groaned, rolling onto his side, clutching his groin like it was his last defense against the world. "I think you broke something," he wheezed. "I didn't," Liana replied. "I held back." She turned and walked to the locker room bench, grabbed her duffel bag, and began to unzip it calmly, like nothing had happened. Like this wasn't the moment three predators realized they were prey. Outside, the muffled beat of music thumped from the studio. The class had resumed. No one had heard the chaos behind the door, just as no one had stepped up when the harassment began. Silence was their ally. But now, Liana was done with silence. She pulled out a second phone, hers. She had also been recording from the moment Brent first stepped into the room. She hadn't expected to need it. She had hoped they'd leave her alone, but here they were. Faces exposed, voices clear, the threats, the laughter, the assault, evidence. Tyler, noticing her phone in her hand, stiffened. You can't send that to anyone." "Why not?" she asked, voice low. "You were so confident filming me. Said you wanted fans watching, right?" "Please," Mason gasped. "You'll ruin us." Liana crouched beside him, eye to eye. "You did that yourselves." She stood, tossed a towel to the floor next to Brent, and walked to the door. But before she exited, she looked over her shoulder. "Here's what happens next. You send that video you took to the group chat, the one where you harassed me in front of everyone. Then you explain to the whole class why you were on the ground a few minutes later. Or," she raised her phone, "I do it for you." None of them answered. "You have until midnight." With that, she pushed open the locker room door and walked out. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She didn't look back. And as she re-entered the dance floor, the others noticed something was different. She wasn't just the quiet new girl anymore. She moved with something heavier now, something more powerful than choreography, a kind of silence that demanded respect. The next morning, The dance studio's group chat exploded. Mason had done exactly as she asked. The video appeared without warning. A clip of their laughter, crude remarks the moment Brent reached out toward her, and her warning, "Touch me again, I dare you," followed by chaos, screams, groans, them curled on the floor. The silence that followed in the chat was deafening. Liana didn't have to say a word. Her reputation was rewritten overnight, not as a victim, but as a storm that had hit without warning. Dancers who once looked away now stared with wide eyes as she entered the studio that afternoon, dressed the same, her posture calm, her hair tied back in a neat bun. But everything had changed. Brent Tyler and Mason weren't present. Word spread quickly they were suspended indefinitely. The studio owner, Ms. Callahan, had received the footage anonymously. A public statement followed zero tolerance for harassment. "We stand with our dancers." Whispers followed Liana as she passed admiration, regret, shame. Some even clapped softly when she crossed the rehearsal floor. But Liana didn't bask in the attention. She didn't return the applause. Her victory wasn't about popularity. It was about reclaiming space. The mirror-lined room that once echoed with insult now reflected strength. She approached her usual spot, tied the ribbons of her point shoes with care, and began to warm up. Every movement was precise, deliberate. Her leg rose in arabesque with grace, but the control in her core, honed not just through dance, but through years of quiet combat, was what truly carried her. Midway through rehearsal, the door creaked open. Tyler entered first, arm in a sling, face pale. Mason followed, his wrist wrapped in a brace. Brent came last, his steps slow, haunted. None of them looked at her. They shuffled to the back of the room where Ms. Callahan waited, arms crossed. She addressed the entire class. "We have reviewed the footage. We've spoken to legal. These three are on probation. Their future here depends on the victim's choice." Liana, all eyes turned. Liana stood, walked forward, and said nothing for a moment. Just looked at them, hollow, broken, trembling. Then she said calmly, "They don't owe me an apology. They owe it to every girl they laughed at before me, everyone they silenced. I'm not here to forgive. I'm here to dance." Ms. Callahan nodded. "So be it." The boys were dismissed, banned from this cycle of classes, stripped of their performance spots, and ordered to complete community service and gender respect training before any return. They limped out of the studio under stares of judgment, not just for what they'd done, but for what they now symbolized, a fallen power. Liana turned back to her place at the front. The music resumed. She danced. But her dance was different now. It was not for applause. It was not for stage lights. It was a reclaiming, a declaration, a warning. Liana's feet moved like fire through rhythm, controlled yet untamed. Each leap, each turn was more than choreography. It was release. As her body moved across the floor, so did the weight that had anchored her since the first moment those boys laid eyes on her. But she didn't need to crush them anymore. She already had. The studio's atmosphere had changed permanently. What used to be a place where silence met cruelty was now a place where silence wielded consequence. Even the mirrors seemed to reflect that shift. Less judgment, more truth. In the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Other students, girls mostly, began to share their own stories. Quiet confessions in corners of the changing room. Soft voices saying, "I didn't know we could fight back." And Liana listened. Not to relive her pain, but to let them feel heard seen safe. Ms. Callahan, watching closely, approached her one day after practice. "I've never seen someone do what you did," she said softly. "I didn't want to," Liana replied, "but I needed to." Callahan nodded. "Would you be willing to teach a few basic self-defense classes here, just for the girls? Voluntary, discreet." Liana hesitated. Then she smiled. Yes. And so began something new. A quiet revolution. Once a week, the back studio transformed from rehearsal space into a circle of strength. No mirrors, no music, just breathing movement and survival. Liana didn't boast. She didn't lecture. She demonstrated. She guided. She reminded them of what their bodies could do, not just for beauty, but for protection. Meanwhile, the trio, Brent, Mason, Tyler, faded into the background. The videos had spread beyond the studio. Colleges knew. Dance agencies backed away. Online forums praised Liana anonymously under hashtags like ballerina strike and #Grace under attack. Brent's father tried to bury it all with legal threats, but with video evidence and studio backing, there was no case to win. They had exposed themselves literally and figuratively. Months later, at a community dance showcase, Liana performed center stage. The lights rose. She stood alone. Her piece was called Unbroken. It began with tight, clenched movement, like a body trapped. But as the music surged, she opened up movement, flowing, with sudden freedom, raw and unfiltered. When the final pose hit, arms spread wide, head held high, the applause shook the walls. After the show, a girl no older than 13 approached, her eyes shining. "Did they really try to hurt you?" Liana knelt to her level and said gently, "They did, but I made sure they never could again." "Are you scared now?" Liana smiled. "No, I'm ready." The girl nodded solemnly. "I want to be like you." And in that moment, Liana knew the pain had meant something. Not just revenge, not just justice, but transformation. She wasn't just a dancer anymore. She was a movement. Violence disguised as teasing, harassment masked as flirtation. It all grows in silence. But silence doesn't have to be weakness. Liana's story teaches us that strength often begins quietly, with composure, with choice. She didn't seek revenge to break others. She stood firm to reclaim herself. Bullies thrive on the belief that their power is permanent, but courage rewrites the script. Whether on a stage, in a school, or in a studio, when we stand against harm, we inspire others to do the same. You don't need to scream to be heard. Sometimes, the most powerful voice is the one that moves with purpose, strikes with precision, and walks away with dignity. And for anyone who's ever been humiliated, know this: you are not powerless. You are not alone. And when the time comes, you too can rise.